Welcome to Take the Lead Radio with Dr. Diane Hamilton, where she interviews some of the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and other individuals who will inspire you to take the lead in your career and personal life. And now, here is Dr. Diane Hamilton.
Welcome to Take the Lead Radio. This is Dr. Diane Hamilton, and I'm so glad you joined us today because we have Colin Walsh here. He is the CEO and co-founder of Varo Money. This is a very unique new company that's on track to become the first mobile-centric national bank in U.S. history. I'm really excited to talk to Colin about what they're doing there. They have a whole new platform, and this is a great time for this. So I'm looking forward to our conversation. I hope you stay tuned, and we'll be back right after this.
Are you interested in finding out more about how HR professionals or leadership consultants can become certified to give the groundbreaking new Curiosity Code Index assessment? The certification program will provide the ability to administer the assessment at reduced rates. Participants will learn how to interpret the results of the CCI, as well as how to deliver an innovation plan workshop designed to improve curiosity, engagement, innovation, and productivity. To find out more, go to curiositycode.com.
I am here with Colin Walsh, who is the CEO and co-founder of Varo Money, which is on track to become the first mobile-centric national bank in U.S. history. Colin founded Varo with a specific vision to help millions of people improve their financial lives. It's so nice to have you here, Colin.
Hi, Diane. It's great to be on your show. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. It was nice of Mike Dulworth, our friend, to connect us. And, he's doing some amazing things, and he told me you're doing some amazing things. And so I wanted to look into it because, I used to be a loan officer. I worked in subprime. I did all kinds of bank-related stuff, and real estate. So very interested in... You had led UK's largest mortgage and savings business at Lloyd's Banking Group. I saw that, and I'm like, wow, we'll have plenty to chat about.
That's right.
Well, can you give a little background for people who don't know you and maybe don't know about Varo, what exactly it is, that led you to this and what you do at Varo?
Yeah, sure. I think first, before we start off, I would want to recognize that we are certainly living in a really interesting sort of unprecedented time that's sort of full of its fair share of volatility and uncertainty, as things start to unfold. And, for me, I've spent my whole career in financial services. And, one thing I've learned more than anything is that customers want institutions they can trust and they can rely on and that they feel safe. And that's even more so in these uncertain times. And
Definitely.
So I think that the work we're doing at Varo has never been more important to really help customers navigate through this period of uncertainty. And so just a little bit backing up on me and my background. So I started my career actually at GE Capital way back when, doing some interesting things. Like I was put on a project right out of college to help set up the first industrial loan bank for GE and create the first kind of corporate procurement card, which was certainly interesting and ended up being a huge business that ultimately was sold to one of my future employers, American Express.
Oh.
And then I then went and worked for American Express actually in the early days, and I was in the small business area before it was, today it's called Open, which is one of the largest providers of small business payments and financial services around the country. But at the time we were called Small Business Services, and we were trying to figure out a whole bunch of things. And one of the projects I worked on was helping to connect consumer and business data in order to create more credit solutions and payment solutions for small businesses. I think that was kind of one of the exciting things that helped to spark, the kind of growth in that business, being able to integrate some of those solutions at a very kind of early stage of that business. And then I went on to Wells Fargo, and at Wells, I had the opportunity to do a whole series of interesting things at a time when Wells was a very different bank, but it was certainly at a relatively young age, had quite a bit of responsibility and helped create the first online consumer credit business in the home equity space. And we went from a PowerPoint presentation to a $2 billion business in like a year and a half. And
Wow.
so that was that was kind of my first like, wow, this is fun creating things and really building and and then I sort of extended out my career by heading overseas and spending a number of years at Lloyd's Banking Group right before the financial crisis and throughout the financial crisis. And then on the other side of it, where, as you mentioned, I oversaw the mortgage business, and I had also had responsibility for the deposits business and all the cards and payments businesses while I was at Lloyd's. So again, kind of cutting my teeth in a variety of different capacities in the deepest economic cycle that we've experienced globally and for quite some time. And so that helped me, I think, not only understand how to navigate through tricky times, but build credibility with regulators. But also it exposed a lot of the things that ultimately motivated me to start Varo, where I was seeing practices that were very focused on helping optimize business outcomes at sometimes at the expense of customers' kind of well-being and financial health. And it wasn't, I don't think there was any ill intention. It was just some of the pressures that are inherent in some of these institutions. And I'll keep going, and then I'll get to Varo. But then I left Lloyd's to go back to Amex. So folks I knew there had asked if I would come back and help sort of run their European consumer business, because it was fractured into a lot of different markets, and sort of provide a little bit more oversight and leadership to all of that, and help spur growth and bringing digital innovations and finding avenues to grow. One of them was small business, and we introduced small business into the UK, and we helped catalyze some of the businesses we had in Italy and Germany and France. And so it was interesting, but I was sort of getting frustrated at the slowness of some of these bigger companies in terms of making decisions, and going back to the point I was making around some of these businesses are great if you have money, but if you don't have a lot of in the way of financial assets, a lot of these big institutions really struggle to help consumers. And that started to become more and more evident throughout the course of my career working in these institutions. And so I was thinking that if you could create a new bank that was all on digital technology, using kind of the latest, whether mobile, cloud, AI, big data, in ways that could actually reach lots of consumers in powerful ways at a substantially lower cost structure, you could do some things that could move the needle for folks that were feeling quite left behind. And as I started to think about, like, where would I do this? The United States made the most sense to come back to the U.S. and figure out a way to help so many of these people that are just everyday Americans that have seen their housing expenses go up, their medical expenses go up, crushing amounts of student debt, but not much in the way of real wage growth. And they were just kind of struggling to make ends meet. And the banks are charging them hundreds of dollars a year in fees and charges. And so could you actually create something that could make a difference in these people's lives? And that's really where Varo was born, and I'm happy to say we're off and running and growing very rapidly. And so, I'd love to just dig in deeper into any of those areas.
Well, that was a great background, and I'm trying to figure out where I want to start. I think I want to start at the end of what you said, because you said you don't charge a lot of the fees, and you're helping them, the consumer maybe who isn't super wealthy. How do you make it work if you don't charge the fees? I mean, it's a business, and there's a certain amount you have to do. And we know that Wells got into issues because they were pushing so much for the sales that people are doing unethical things. So, without pushing so much, without charging over, too high of fees, how do you make this business model work and still be, have conscious capitalism and all that,
Yeah, sure. So our cost structure, particularly once we open the bank, which is, not very far away now, we built a really modern technology platform that we'll be operating the bank on. I'm a little biased, but I like to think it's probably going to be the most modern tech platform of any bank in the world. And our costs are going to be we estimate about 25% of big banks.
So is there
our cost to serve?
Is there an actual bank, or is it all online?
Oh, it's all digital,
All digital.
100%
Okay.
digital. It's
Uh-huh.
all on your phone, and you can access services on
Okay.
the web, but
Hmm.
it's 100% digital. So there's
Okay.
no branches,
No
there's no
branches.
cash handling. We don't own ATMs.
Hmm.
All of these things that, and we don't, the technology that these banks are operating on, some of it's 30, 40 years old.
Right.
It's in legacy server farms and coded in COBOL and Fortran and things that are like, there aren't
Yeah.
even any programmers left that know these
Right.
languages. So I mean, it's
Basic.
just kind of, it's
Uh-huh.
riddled with issues,
Uh-huh.
trying to comply with regulatory requests when data is trapped in multiple silos, and all of these things that, even right now, I mean, working from home, we were able to convert our workforce into work at home. Everybody at Varo, customer service agents through engineers, in 24 hours. These banks that their employees don't even have laptops, they're on desktops, their
Oh, that's
data is
true.
not in the
Yeah.
cloud, so they're struggling to get their workforce at home. And so, I mean, all of these things just, make us much more nimble, and the ability to deliver services without all the fees and charges. We also have a platform so we earn our money through every time someone swipes on the debit card, and then
Hmm.
we'll have credit cards and charge cards and other
So
forms
from
of payment
the
vehicles.
businesses more than the
Yeah,
consumer.
right.
Hmm.
That's right. So
Hmm.
that's a source of revenue. There's a very little bit of fee revenue,
Hmm.
that's very transparent. So there are no hidden fees. We also, because our technology is quite sophisticated, we have a group of partners that we've allowed into our platform to help people find like gig work,
Hmm.
or to help them repair their credit, or to access some insurance products. And we're able to use information to help customers kind of match them up with these opportunities, and that's been very successful for us as well. And so there's some commission revenue associated with that, and then we'll have lending. So we really do have quite a diversified way of making money,
Hmm.
and still being able to support that fundamental value proposition of helping customers make their money stretch further by not paying those fees. We give customers their paycheck 2 days early. We give them a little bit of cushion, before the next paycheck arrives, if they need to go into overdraft, where we don't charge them a fee. We give them tools to save. We pay a lot of interest on the savings, so they both have the tool and the incentive to save, which I think is super important, because just basic financial resiliency is something so many consumers lack. And a crisis like what we're living through right now is really exposing that people are scared, because they just, if they lose their job, or if they're working gig work, or on an hourly wage, and that goes away, how do they get by? And
Right.
so, if Varo can, even in its own small way, help people start to build some basic savings when they have some steady income flows coming in, it helps protect them in these times like today.
Well, as we're worried about all this, it brings to mind. I'm imagining you have the same guarantees and insured funds that all the other banks have, right?
That's right. So
Okay.
we have a partner bank right now, and so we're FDIC insured through
Hmm.
our partner bank. But
Okay.
we just received approval last month from the FDIC as we open up Varo Bank,
Hmm.
the Varo National Bank. So the FDIC will insure us directly, so it won't be through a partner bank. So all the deposits up to $250,000 that a consumer has with Varo will be insured by the FDIC.
And you mentioned no cash. So what if they needed cash? How would they get it?
Yeah, so we have a partnership with a company called Allpoint that is in every sort of CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Walmart, where you can go to
Those
their
ATM, kind of a
their
general
ATMs.
ATM.
So
Uh huh.
so there's 55,000 ATMs, which is actually larger, just to put it in context, than Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Chase combined.
Right.
And it's all in the app, so it's super easy to go in under the Move Money tab and click on, just tap on where's an ATM near me, and it uses geolocation and shows you all the ATMs in your neighborhood or wherever you are.
Well, and then you do mortgages as well?
Not yet.
Not
So
yet.
that's
Okay.
something. So after we open the bank, we'll look at, so the key problems that I like to say that, we're trying to help solve right now for
Hmm.
the everyday consumer is, first and foremost, helping you kind of make your money work harder and
Right.
stretch a little bit further.
Okay.
Secondly, building basic financial resilience. So it's giving the tools and the incentives to help people save, help people put a little bit of money away. If you're using Varo on a regular basis, if you're putting $1,000 a month into Varo and using the debit card 5 times a month, we'll pay you 2.8% on your savings. it's the best in the country.
Wow.
And so but it's intended not to help rich people get richer. It's really intended to give people an incentive to say, like, wow, I like, this is really rewarding. And, and customers love it.
Well, I imagine a lot of people wish they had saved a little bit more right now because of all the situation.
Exactly.
How are you? Is this bad timing to start this? Good timing to start this? How does that impact you?
I don't want to sort of like capitalize on other people's hardship by any means, but this is actually a really good time to be a digital bank. And being a modern technology-driven bank that is very focused, from top down to helping customers succeed financially, with really authentic sort of ethos around customer well-being. And there's never really been a better time to be in this space, working with our customers and providing solutions to help them. And you don't have to walk into a branch. Our service is reliable. As I mentioned, we were able to very quickly execute our business continuity plan and get everybody working from home, answering calls, responding to emails. So actually, this is, people, you talked about, withdrawing cash, or also you didn't ask, but to deposit cash. You can deposit cash in many of these locations. We have a relationship with Green Dot, but not even using cash. Like, some of the experts are saying stay away from cash. Well, you can connect Varo to Venmo and PayPal and Cash App and all these other, so you can move money electronically. Like, we have a Varo to Varo feature where Varo customers can send money to each other instantly through electronic channels. So there's a lot of ways to just use digital channels to pay your bills and to manage your money without even having to touch cash. Just quickly going back to, I was talking about the kind of key problems that we're solving, because you asked about mortgages. I talked about stretching your money, building financial resilience. The other area that our customers are telling us they really want help with is helping to build and repair credit. So I talked a little bit earlier about just people feeling very financially squeezed, and particularly people that have like large student debts, and some of them have just slipped a little bit behind. And let me tell you, the cost of having a poor credit in this country is huge. Whether you want to get a phone, or you want to lease an apartment, or you want to get an auto loan, everything just becomes more difficult. And so we're working on a whole series of solutions, particularly once we open the bank, to really help people in that area. And I think it, again, will make a meaningful difference in people's lives, particularly younger people, but also people of all ages that are looking for solutions to help them. And then the last area that we're going to focus on, as we kind of work through our product roadmap, is home ownership, and helping people get on the housing ladder, think about solutions to help people from a housing finance perspective. And that's an area, as you pointed out, I have a lot of experience in from my past career. So.
Well, and I was thinking, when you're talking about low credit and all that, are you saying, is it still 620, the bottom, like the breaking point of what you consider is kind of like what you'd want to have for a loan anymore? I mean, what's considered bad credit at this point?
It varies, it really varies. I think that, if you're talking about a $10,000, $25,000 loan, I think that you're going to see cutoffs. But the thing that I'm trying to think about myself and helping my team think about is, like, how do you not rely just on the like traditional credit bureau, like a FICO score, but how do you think about the relationship in its entirety, and how to help people access credit and make better decisions, and give them information to make better decisions about their credit, without necessarily being so sort of tied to just a FICO cutoff, which for some people, particularly if you imagine, it's your first time using credit, or you're new to the country and you don't have a credit score, like, how do you access credit? And so there's a number of tools that can help people. And so we're thinking about ways in which we can really bring some innovation to that space.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see with, as we're talking on housing right now, if there's going to be any housing relief for everything that's going on, mortgage relief, I should say, from, how is this going to impact the regular banks, that when people can't pay these mortgages?
It's mortgages, it's personal loans. I mean, you think about, like, without naming names, but there's a number of companies that have grown very quickly over the last decade, focusing on giving consumers unsecured personal loans. And having spent 30 years in financial services, I can tell you, and I've been through a few cycles, that doesn't always work out so well, particularly if so I think you look at it from the consumer perspective. many consumers are going to need help to kind of bridge those expenses and not put themselves in a situation where, as I talked about, they're damaging their credit and then they suffer the consequences of that. Also just staying in their homes and being able to find ways to make it work during a period where they might have disruptions in their income. And so I absolutely think there's going to need to be some assistance that'll come from the banks themselves, but it'll also probably going to have to come from the government as well.
Right. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a loan officer today, and she does a lot of reverse mortgages, and she says every rich person she knows calls her right now to do a reverse mortgage because that's a one way to get the money out. But she says
access.
Right. But then she was saying they're worried about the appraisers going to the houses, and they don't want to go if they're supposed to not go around other people and all this stuff. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I can't imagine that would be the bottleneck because, an empty house or whatever. But I thought that was an interesting conversation I had with her. But you were talking about some of the things that banks didn't do when you were watching what they were doing to help consumers. Now you're talking about some of them now. I mean,
well, take overdraft for example.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
to me, this is like a pet peeve of mine. I hate overdraft fees. I think they're just so awful. And banks would look for ways to put people in overdraft to charge them those $35 fee. Like changing payment hierarchies, like when payments were when certain transactions would post, so that the payments would come in last and then the expenses would come in first, which would then drop you. I mean, there were reports, investigative reports that uncovered some of this stuff. And it's just things like that, which are just so. And why do you have to charge $35 if somebody's buying a bag of groceries and they go $2 into negative?
Right.
I mean, to me, it just makes no sense. And the average overdraft in this country is $50, and it's repaid in 3 days. So that's why we offer that $50 cushion with no fee, and so we don't charge the fee, and the customers love it because it just gives it could be a tank of gas if you're an Uber or Lyft driver and you just need that extra tank of gas to keep working, and your paycheck has or your whatever your payment hasn't come in yet. It just helps create that little bit of a bridge. But the industry made $35 billion last year off of these fees. I mean, and
I think that there's so many people that are getting taken advantage of as you're talking about this, and I want to get your insight on those payday loan places, because it just seems so awful.
we could definitely talk about that. Hold that thought for 1 second.
Okay.
But the other thing that I just I can't stand is minimum balance charges. So is that a subsidy that poor people are helping rich people because if you don't have a minimum balance, so then you have to pay $15 a month, but somebody who does have that money doesn't. I mean, things like that just don't make any sense to me. But these fees cost people who, and the reality is, this is America. I mean, this is not just some marginalized group of consumers. There's so many people in this country that are trying to make ends meet, and they're paying all these fees and charges. So a bank like Varo comes in and eliminates that. Not only does it free up more cash flow and give people more capacity to save, it also takes away a lot of stress and anxiety. And so that's I said my piece on that.
No,
so
but
I mean, and so I think that there's a lot of kind of societal good that can be done along those lines. But then talking about payday, so that's another one. I think that it just it really takes advantage of people who desperately need access to cash and to some funding. And so, they'll justify it by saying, look, if we didn't exist, what would these people do? They'd get kicked out of their homes and all the rest of it. But I absolutely think this is a space that, some good actors and banks themselves could do more to really help people with bridging those cash flow gaps. And, now you have a whole kind of group of digital players that are emerging that I scratch my head a little bit and question, are they really that much better than the brick and mortar payday lenders? Because they're charging, monthly fees and transaction fees if you want instant, and then you get they're asking for tips and all this other stuff. And you add it all up and you say, okay, for $75, did this customer just pay 10 or 12 bucks? And this is going to get paid back in a few days. You start to calculate the APR on some of that stuff, and you say to yourself, well, that's not really that much better than going down to a payday lender. And so I think that those are things that I think for a company like Varo and other digital banks that can, have that low cost structure and can generate revenues through a number of different sources could do some really interesting things to help these consumers.
Do you think, are you going to be able to capture this extra funds the way American Express charges a little bit extra from the customer, or are you still at the same level as the other visas and that type of thing?
Yeah, we get it through the Visa network.
Hmm.
So we're just kind of on the rate card with everybody else. So
Yeah,
if,
right.
so if we get really big and we can actually move markets someday, then that might be a different conversation. But
Right.
I think right now, yeah, we just participate in the Visa network.
Well, I'm all for not having cash at all. The thought right now of
Yeah.
touching other people's money when everybody's sick and things, you know what I mean?
Oh, I know. Well, you
Where's
make sure
that
you're
going?
washing your
Yeah,
head. Make sure you're
right.
washing your head. So, well, but you also have to think about there are people that live in a cash economy that they get
Right.
paid in cash and they get paid tips in cash and other things, and so there is a part of the economy that just that's how they manage their expenses, and that's how their income comes in. And so being able to provide ways for people to deposit that cash or to access cash when they need it is going to be important. But I would love to see a world where that wasn't necessary, and instead of being handed cash, you could just send somebody, an instant money transfer through an app, or have other ways of getting that money in people's bank accounts.
We're definitely seeing more of that, which I like,
Hmm.
and I'll be very interested to see how much more of that we see. But I think that it's been a rough time for banks, obviously, with everything going on right now. And do you think that, I mean, are you worried at all that this whole virus situation will uh, close down the banks, or have an impact on your you saying it's good for you, but for some
Yeah,
other banks, I mean, what's going to happen
it
to the whole?
it's so hard to tell. I mean, it's just so uncertain how this is going to play out. I definitely think it's a wake up call for all of us in a number of fronts. I mean, one is we talked about just sort of putting away money in some form of savings to be able to protect against uncertainties. I think, how do you use technology in ways that allow you to be more nimble and respond, and reduce the reliance on cash. So I think there's just a number of things that we're gonna take away from this. But I think it's gonna be choppy waters. I mean, I think there's just a lot we don't know, and we're learning every day. From my standpoint, what's most important is that we keep our people safe, and ensure that they're doing the right things, so that they're not exposed, and that we're available for our customers, and that we're able to demonstrate to our customers that their money is going to be safe, that we're going to be a reliable partner, that we're going to help them through this time. And to me, those are the most important priorities.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see what happens in general with how banking prepares people. How much preparedness we're going to have for crisis management now because of this,
Hmm.
and tracking things is going to be another interesting area as far as like blockchain technology, and how does that impact you? Are you guys involved in any of
Yeah,
that research?
I mean, we're keeping a close eye on the technology as a potentially interesting future technology. I don't think it's something that for right now
Hmm.
we have put a lot of effort into. I think it's more kind of watching as it evolves, as some of those use cases evolve, as they scale to be able to handle more transaction throughput. I mean, right now, it takes a blockchain much longer to process transactions at scale than it would like the payment network, like a Visa or MasterCard payment network. And but I think we're keeping a close eye on that, and we'll participate in that broader ecosystem over time. But for right now, we've used a lot of kind of the latest technologies to help us architect our banking platform, and using kind of real time systems that have ability to scale, and using the latest sort of security technologies to continue to make sure that our customers' money is safe. And that's really where we put our attention in the short term.
Well, I think customer service is going to be such a huge part of what differentiates, different banks and different industries. And, I always thought, since you had experience with American Express, I always thought they did a really pretty good job from the consumer angle. Yeah, and actually this week I've been trying to cancel a trip because of everything going on, and even with American Express, I mean, I'd be on for 2.5 hours and then get disconnected 2.5. I never could get through. So
I think they're just overloaded.
Which is so you don't think of that from such a company like that has such great normal operations, and you don't think of the unethical Wells thing ever happening, because you think, well, they wouldn't do it at some place like that. Were you surprised by that happened at Wells, or do you think that a lot of these banks have situations that no one knows about? Because I'm just looking at it from a sales perspective. I was in banking and sales, and I know how much pressure they can put on you.
Well, so I'll take both of those. One is the service angle, and then on the kind of sales practices. So on the service side, and you mentioned this point around just business continuity and thinking about how do you scale service operations in a time of crisis. And I do think this is something that is going to be a valuable learning for many companies, but particularly companies that are really at the heart of this problem, with cancellation of travel and hotel bookings and all of these things that you've got the whole world trying to do exactly what you're doing. And so it's like, I'm sure it will bring a next generation of servicing technologies around AI and automation and being able to transact with systems, so where the AI is actually interacting with customers to be able to fulfill the transaction that you're asking for without having to actually rely on the capacity of live agents. And I think so. I do think this is gonna probably accelerate some of these technologies, particularly in these large companies that have big service operations. When you get into this, once in a lifetime sort of spike in volume, but how do you deal with it? Let's hope it's once in a lifetime. So anyhow, so I think that's gonna open up a whole new frontier around how tech can help these businesses through these very volatile times. Now on the sales side, the only thing I can say is I'm just so disappointed because, I was at Wells for 9 years. It was a really good company that did care about its customers, and it was trying really hard to sort of stay by what it stood for in terms of its values. And I think it lost its way as it got so big. And there was, to your point, there was so much pressure that was being pushed down on these people to hit sales targets that it sort of like forgot who it was and what it stood for and the role it played in consumers' lives. And these, and once cultures start to fray like that, it's really hard to kind of bring it back. And I know people are working, really hard at Wells Fargo to try to restore that, but it's all about trust. And trust is super hard earned, and it's really easily lost. And as I started my company, it was all about, I would say time and time again, like the biggest currency that we trade in is trust. And everything we do, we have to reinforce for customers that we're there for them, that they're safe, that systems are secure, that that they can trust us to do the right thing. That their data, data is another fascinating topic. Like we have a lot of data, but we're super ethical around how we use that data and how we think about that data, and we have strong data governance policies to make sure that doesn't ever go the wrong way, and that we're protecting customers' data and we're keeping their data private and secure. Because if you do the wrong thing there, you will erode trust. And I think Facebook and others have demonstrated what happens when customers no longer feel safe that their information is being protected.
It's really scary with the dark web and everything else. When you hear about all the things that can be shared and what directions things are going. Do you feel like you have control over the data? You know what I mean? Everybody seems like they can hack everything lately.
Yeah, we have really good people and really good systems that this, as a digital bank, as you can imagine, this is a huge priority for us.
Yeah, I can't even. It's such a hard thing. And as you were talking about Wells, I teach a lot of courses still, business courses, where we talk about what happens in, codes of ethics and where the culture problems start. Do you see that more of an upper leadership or mid management level, like lack of control, too many levels? Where do you think the blame kind of lies there?
I think accountability is kind of throughout the system, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it's toned from the top.
Mm-hmm.
I say a lot in my own organization that the leaders set the tone of the organization,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that they say matter, and the things that they do matter. So the things that they do matter more than the things that they say,
Right,
because
right, right.
people watch your actions, and if there's not consistency, or if it's the wrong things, others will follow, and that's where they take their cues. So unfortunately, I'm a big believer that the accountability, the buck has to stop at the top of the pyramid.
Well, and it's, you're at the top of the pyramid for where you are, and I know you have raised close to 180 million, that I know, serving 1 million registered customers, the last thing I had read.
It's actually
And
1.6, but that's,
is
yeah.
it?
So
Wow,
yeah,
good. Now
we're
that could,
growing quickly.
well, but how do you just do that? You know what I mean? How do you get everybody to go, okay, well, I'm going to trust this bank now? How do you get the exposure and the reach and people knowing about you? That has to be very challenging.
Well, I think the timing is right in terms of consumers maybe 10 years ago would have been a lot more skeptical around doing business with a digital bank or
Mm-hmm.
actually putting their paycheck in to a digital bank. I think things have evolved, and there's greater awareness that this is really a credible alternative. And we find that customers come to us and find out about our service. Let me give you an example. Like,
Okay.
a 31-year-old single mom who works really hard to kind of pay all the bills, then has kind of a creative job at night, who's kind of constantly on the go, whether it's dropping kids off at school or getting to work or whatever. um, they find out about something like Varo,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh wow, I don't have to pay these hundreds of dollars of fees. They're giving me my paycheck early. I can actually have a little bit of cushion if I have a gap before the next paycheck arrives. They're giving me tools to put money away. They're paying me 2.8% of my savings. I can do peer-to-peer transfers to like all this stuff is like, wow, this is
Yeah.
incredible. And
Yeah.
they start telling their friends.
Right. And is it a
And so
generational thing, do you think, that younger generations are more apt to adopt that type of, this is cool, I love technology, I'm going to share this?
it's interesting because I thought when I started the company that it was going to be, your kind of very typical urban millennial type consumer, and
Mm-hmm.
that has not been the case at all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they use it, but we are in almost every town and city across the country. We are serving customers. 40% of our customers are not millennial, that are older than millennials. I mean, they're Gen X,
Mm-hmm.
they're boomers.
Mm-hmm.
We have customers that are in their 80s and 90s that are using
Uh-huh.
Varo. I mean, it's
Really?
it's amazing. Like, and but we're finding that it starts in communities where people just start using it and talking about it. And the other thing that we're finding is that in this country, you've had a lot of communities that have had branches close, and so there's like the bank that was always there is no longer there. And
Right.
then people find out about something like Varo, they download it, they start using it. As long as there's a Walgreens in town and you can get cash or
Mm-hmm.
deposit cash, then you don't really need a bank branch anymore.
Right.
And so that's another phenomenon that we're seeing that taking place all over the country. And I think one of the things I was probably most surprised about is the amount of activity we see in small towns, like where people are using Varo,
Uh-huh.
because it's their bank. And so it's really been like, I talk a lot about, like, for me personally, if how would I measure success of this company is if we can create this really kind of iconic, culturally relevant brand
Mm-hmm.
that is riding the back of the kind of society. Like, what are the struggles that people are facing in society, and that we can be a solution to that, and we can do societal good. That to me is like the biggest victory, and really kind of being that sort of being really culturally relevant and aware of what's going on.
Well, I definitely think banking is going to change so much, and you're obviously ahead on the curve. I'm curious about just the regular things you think about with banks. You get checks, you have LLC accounts, you have, whatever it is. Do you do all that too? I mean, what other than mortgages, what don't you do?
Yeah, so we don't issue checkbooks,
Mm-hmm.
but you can send a check through the Varo app.
Mm-hmm.
And we currently don't have business accounts. So we don't have business accounts yet. We don't have mortgages yet, but pretty much all, and then after we open the bank, we'll have sort of joint accounts and household accounts so people can, families can have accounts with us. And so really the big things that I would say we're not doing today and don't really plan in the short term are going to be business accounts. And then, we'll do mortgages in a couple of years.
Why not business accounts?
Right now, there's so much for us to do on the consumer side.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say we would never do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as I talked about earlier, but I have a lot of experience with small business. And it would
Right.
probably be more small business than big business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an area that I think is also vital to a healthy economy. But we've got so much we only do so much in a short period of time. So
Right.
I sort of say, like, guys, we got to focus and do what we're doing really well and create, remarkable experiences for customers in the areas that I mentioned, that are real pain points for consumers. And then over time, we'll look at, can we help small businesses as well?
And you're set up like a traditional company, right? Do you have a board of directors?
Oh yeah. Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah. No, I have my board. I have a former CEO and chairman of Bank of America on our board. I have the former general counsel from the OCC on our board. I mean, it's a pretty impressive group of folks.
I think is it based out of, where are you based out of? California?
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Yeah, I figured.
And Salt Lake City. So the bank will be based. I'm physically in San Francisco. The bank when we open will be Salt Lake City.
Well, is there anything that I didn't ask you about what you have planned for the future for this bank? I mean, you said mortgages coming up eventually, maybe small businesses. Is there some area you see expansion in that you haven't expanded yet, but you'd like to?
I think, creating, as we talked a little bit about, creating some innovative solutions around credit
Mm-hmm.
is an area that I think we're going to be able to do a lot of good for consumers, after we open the bank. But I think those are, really sticking to kind of the core focus of the consumer that we can really help well. And then just continuing to drive a series of innovations that can make a difference in their lives. The other thing that I would mention that we're looking at is how to give this very large group of customers, a voice and a platform
Mm-hmm.
where they can be heard and they can interact with us as a community, and they can interact with each other as a community on a digital platform. And so these are things that we're thinking about as well, to really take Varo beyond just sort of core banking, but really something that is more meaningful to people in their daily lives.
Are more your customers accessing through an app or through their computer, PC, or Mac? An app.
And we get millions and millions of logins every month through the app.
Is there
Android,
any issue?
Android and iOS.
Well, within people who don't have a ton of money that are waiting, maybe at the cash payday loan place, I guess everybody has a phone these days, right? I mean, is that an issue for anybody, or are you finding that's not a problem?
Most Americans, particularly anyone under the age of 40 right now, I think it's sort of like 88 or 90% of people have a smartphone right now. And so there are some people that are still online, and we
Mm-hmm.
do offer the ability to access your account online. And we'll be continuing to enhance some of those services. But most everyone now has access to a smartphone and would be able to have access to our app.
Well, it's really interesting to hear, just where banking is going, and I really, some of the best training I ever had in all my career was underwriter training when I worked in
Mm-hmm.
the subprime industry many years ago, and I really think that a lot of banks aren't in business anymore because of not having foresight and not really looking at what makes sense, and it sounds like that's where your you're really focused on,
And
that.
listening to your customer. I think
Hmm.
that's the thing that, and I give Amex a lot of credit for training me to be, very, very customer centric. I actually have a number of former Amex people on my team as well.
Oh, really?
And we really obsess about, what do our customers want, and take a lot of time to listen to what they're saying and building the things that they're asking for. And because we're a modern tech company and we're on a very nimble platform, we can do things very fast, which is another huge competitive advantage for us. But I do think, going back to that, if you're going to build trust, it's a two-way street, and you've got to be listening to what your customers are saying, and then responding.
Now, where are you in seed funding past that, A, B, C? Where are you? Are you going to go IPO? Where does all that stand?
Eventually,
Hmm.
we're right now, as we're getting ready to open the bank. We just raised some more capital,
Hmm.
so we're Series D,
D. Okay.
and then we'll be looking at being, profitable in the next year. So the company is growing very rapidly. It's monetizing quickly, and then we'll look at where the markets are, but probably look to IPO at some point in a few years.
Well, Chris Ye's been on my show, and I know that he wrote that book
Yeah, Mike
recently.
Mike has a relationship with Chris and
Right.
Reed. Yeah,
Yeah, with
yeah,
Reid Hoffman.
exactly.
And I was
Yeah,
curious, yeah, if you're in that
and
head
Reed is part
scaling
of
group.
one of our big investors is the Rise Fund,
Hmm.
and it's a big social impact fund. And Reed is on the founders board of the Rise Fund, so it's all kind of a small world.
Yeah, I'm so glad Mike introduced us because I'm on with the board on Flourish, his,
Great.
work. And are you doing anything with Flourish? I couldn't remember if you said you were.
Well, I was on Mike's old board
Uh huh.
for almost that was about 10 years ago.
Uh huh.
So he and I keep in close contact, but I haven't done anything with Flourish yet. But I know he and some of my folks are talking about is there a partnership opportunity at some point.
Yeah, it's been really fun to work with him, and I'm so glad that he introduced us. And I could tell this was
Likewise.
a really interesting conversation. I mean, I've had everything from blockchain to banking and everything else on the show, but really, I think you're the very first one to get to this kind of level of to having a digital bank like this. And I think it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens to the old institutions as you succeed, and I'm sure your competitors will start wanting to ramp up more, and it's going to be a real interesting
Yeah,
industry to watch.
well, and it's been interesting working with the regulators too, because I think they really see the role that Varo will play
Hmm.
in the banking landscape. Because, as we talked about, many of these banks just struggle to profitably serve this group of customers. And
Hmm.
so a bank like Varo could really bring a whole new level of financial inclusion into the banking system, in terms of really being able to allow people to have affordable, high quality banking services across the board, regardless of what their income is. And so, it's been interesting as the regulators have gotten closer and closer to our business. I think they've developed a lot of conviction that this is going to be the type of business model that can do a lot of good in American society.
Do we need the physical building? I mean, why do they still hang on to that?
I'll let someone else come onto your show and argue for that.
You don't see a
I
reason for it?
personally don't think that we need it anymore, but others
Uh-huh.
might have a different point of view.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, if I don't have to go to a bank, I'm very happy, and I do everything I can digitally, and so I could see that this is a wonderful opportunity for so many people to save some money and to learn more about what you guys do. So I really was so glad you were on today to share this, and I think a lot of people are going to want to know, how do they find out about the bank or contact you or find out more? Is
yeah,
there some
it's
kind of
pretty
link?
easy. Yeah, if you go to the App Store, the Apple App Store, or the Google Play Store, it's Varo Money, Varo, and mobile banking, Varo mobile banking, and you can download the app, or you can go to varomoney.com on and learn more about us on our website.
Is there a minimum deposit?
Absolutely not. No minimum, no no minimum deposits required, and no minimum deposit fees either. So,
Oh, that's nice. On the fee thing, I get very annoyed by that. So very interesting. And
Great.
sorry, I have a cold, so my voice it's not the bad cold, but my voice is starting to go from talking. But it's really been very interesting to hear about what you're doing, and I think that this is going to be very successful, and I was so excited to talk to you about it. So thank you, Colin, for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Diane. Really enjoyed it, and look forward to staying in touch. So thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we'll be back right after this message. Do you know someone who might benefit from taking the Curiosity Code Index assessment? The CCI is the first and only assessment that determines the factors that inhibit curiosity. It's simple. If you recommend the assessment to someone else, you can receive 20% of the purchase price that they pay when they take the CCI through the link provided by you. To obtain the link and become an affiliate, please go to drdianehamilton.com/affiliate. Well, I'd really like to thank Colin for being my guest today. This was really a fascinating conversation. I get so many great guests on this show. You'll just learn so much from everybody who's on here. If you've missed any past episodes, you can go to drdianehamilton.com to go to the radio station part, or you can go to the blog to read it. But we're also, if you look at the bottom of the radio page, it'll tell you all the AM/FM shows where we're listed. But you can listen to us on where podcasts air in iTunes, iHeart, Roku, you name it, we're out there. But I really love the blog on the website just because we transcribe everything. And so if you want to go back and just catch part of the show by reading it, it's there. And please tweet your tweetable moments. I'd love to hear from you, what you liked, what you found really helpful. But what Colin's talking about is just the future of banking, and it's just fascinating to me to learn what everybody's coming up with these new business ideas. I love the curiosity behind just all the exploratory areas of what people can do. Today alone, I've interviewed so many different people. Sometimes I interview 2, 3, 4, 5 people sometimes in a day, and so the shows all air on different days sometimes. But we're talking about just learning about more and unusual things, and that's why my voice is going, because I've talked to so many people today. It's such a time where companies can just position the way we do things. I mean, we know we've heard Uber has changed the driving and the transportation industry. We're talking about how the education industry is ripe for reinvention, and the banking industry, I think, is going to get a lot of attention this year, of course, for some negative reasons because of the coronavirus. But we're also going to see that we need to change how we do a lot of this. We're going to start to see a lot of different virtual ways of doing things that we used to do in person, which is all really fascinating to me. In my research and curiosity, I just discovered that there were certain things that kept people back from being curious, and one of them was technology, and sometimes it's over or underutilization of it. And I think there's a lot of times that we underutilize what we could do, and we just rely on technology without truly understanding it. And I think we have an opportunity here to take the technology for what it can really do for us and best utilize it. And Colin really is connected to some of the people I respect the most, so I was really excited to having him on the show today to talk about how they foresee banking, and of course with a background with working at Wells and American Express. Really interesting stuff. So I love the fact that he's working on helping people to make their lives better, especially in times when we could use a little bit of help right now. And it was all very fascinating show. So thank you to Colin, but thank you to all my guests. And I hope you take some time to go through some of the past shows. I know a lot of people are home and bored and wanting to do something. And if you're listening to this, there's, I think, I don't even know, 400 or 500 shows that are on iTunes alone. And there's so many experts in so many different areas that you can really take this time to learn and explore some of the areas where maybe you just didn't have time before. And I know it's kind of boring on weekends. I know it is for me, and I've been learning a lot from everybody. And I think I hope you take some time to do that as well, because everybody's sharing so much free information, and it's the greatest time to take advantage of the technology of what it offers. But really enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you join us for the next episode of Take the Lead Radio. You've been listening to Take the Lead with Dr. Diane Hamilton on C-Suite Radio.